All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, over there in Los Angeles, California. My good friend, fellow 49ers Hub fanatic, 49ers fanatic, just, you know me, Mr. 49ers all the time. Now, Evan Sowards is here. Evan, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good. You almost said fellow 49ers fan, and then you just like
No, I just
stumbled
did it on
away,
purpose. I was like,
trying to get away from it. It's okay.
well, people ask me, they're like, you have a strong 49ers presence on this podcast. You've turned the NFL show into a very 49ers heavy experience because you had this great rant last week on the Niners. Like, this is kind of a 49ers adjacent podcast at this point.
Well, I think I can only speak, I'm not a real, I love talking about the NFL, but my world comes from the 49ers for sure. But like, I feel like this is a 49ers and Falcons podcast. I think it's a Falcons podcast with some idiot talking about the 49ers every now and then, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, one idiot talking about the Falcons too. But we're going to have someone on this program who's right up there in Detroit, Michigan, who is definitely not that, and going to make us feel very silly with how good at his job that he actually is. Great podcaster, great data researcher, doing data science over at Summer Sports with Thomas Dimitroff, another Atlanta connection, former GM, longtime GM of my Atlanta Falcons. Eric Eager is over there from PFF. So good stuff going on over there. But Tej, Seth is here. Tej, how's it going, man?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. It's going really well. I'm excited to talk some football with you guys today.
Well, we haven't had a Lions guy on this program yet. Like, I don't think we've had a Lions specific portion of this podcast. We've had Eric Thompson, who was great on the Vikings. We've had different folks, Jarrett Bailey on the Steelers. Like, there's just, when we bring in different people to talk NFL with us on this Monday night show, we've had a lot of different fans on this program, but we have not had a Lions guy on this, and a Matt Stafford apologist, as you point out in your Twitter bio. But my question to you, like, we need to start with the Lions. The Lions hire Scotty Montgomery as their new running backs coach. Deuce Staley's out the building. He moves to Carolina to join Frank Reich's staff. And then you have this big year, right? Like, the offense was really good. You were kind of nervous that you were going to lose both your OC and DC, and you might still lose Aaron Glenn because no one wants this Arizona Cardinals job. It seems like Brian Flores takes a DC job over being the favorite for the Cardinals, which I don't know what that says the most about going on in that organization, but it seems like nobody really wants that job. You can read between the lines and why that might be not the best thing. It's like, do I want to deal with Kyler Murray on a daily basis? I don't know. And then you get to keep your guy. Ben Johnson stays. Like, he early in the process, who it looked like he was going to be a real candidate in Carolina, Indianapolis, a couple of their spots. He's back, and he's been seen as this kind of offensive juggernaut, and did obviously great work with Jared Goff this year, having hit one of his best seasons of his NFL career. How are you feeling about the Lions and just how big it was for them to be able to keep Johnson, bring in Scotty Montgomery, who's a really good running backs coach, to replace Deuce Staley, because you have been able to run the ball pretty well as well. But like, with the staff, it seems like most of this is going to stay intact, and you really are at this pivotal offseason for Detroit because you came so close to making the playoffs this year. You end Aaron Rodgers and the Packers playoff run. Now going into next year, there's expectations. There's like, hey, we need to make the playoffs now. There's no more messing around. Like, you have to take that final jump. Like, I think getting Johnson back is a huge under the radar thing. But where are you at with all that?
You said it perfectly. And I think what the Lions have tried to do with their coaching staff is to get as many former NFL players into the building. And we have Scotty Montgomery where he had some NFL experience. He's coming into the building. He was part of Jonathan Taylor's great season with his rushing ability last year before it kind of tailed off this year. And like, that is why I think like they think so highly of Ben Johnson, is because he's the only coach on staff that really didn't play in the NFL. He's kind of the exact opposite. Is the son of two math teachers, got a perfect score on his ACT, majored in computer science in college. So like he kind of approaches football from a different perspective. And I think that's good for this coaching staff to have, because or else it would just be all former NFL players, which is a good thing. And it has worked out. But Ben Johnson's creativity and his understanding of how to really exploit defenses through like innovative play calling. That the Lions were running the most diverse run game in the league last year between kind of gap runs and zone runs. They could kind of do all of that with their offensive line, as well as a play action heavy pass game that really got the ball in Amon-Ra St. Brown's hands often. I think like a lot of what Ben Johnson is able to do should be able to continue into next year because of how innovative we saw him this past year.
What do you think, Evan? Are you just as excited about them keeping him and just where the Lions are at? Are you a Lions believer in 2023 and that they actually, 2023, and they're going to make the leap?
I mean, so like, I think, what's funny is somebody said, me and Kyle Madsen of Blue Wire as well, we're talking today, and he said, we're joking, and he said, no journalism, just vibes. And I think like that is how I embody that. Like when it comes to sports, like I'm not a writer, but I'm all about the vibes. And the Lions give me like this just glowing orb full of vibes. And obviously Campbell is just like this exciting coach. He's super, I just love the trajectory of it. First, he starts saying all these crazy things. He's drinking like 16 ounces of espresso in a cold brew coffee cup. He's biting ankles, all these crazy things. I love that it's like setting the foundation of like, oh, he's this weird, wacky coach. This isn't going to go well. And then they start getting better. And then there's buy-in with players. And then, the right hires come in, and all of a sudden the offense starts clicking. And that wide receiver, who just so happened to be coming off of a pretty bad ACL injury, didn't get to play all year. And one of the last few plays of their entire season, you see this huge potential spark at the wide receiver position. Was it Jameson Williams? It's
Jameson Williams. Yeah. From,
Jameson
Alamo,
Williams,
who I was super, super high on.
Right.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show this is an offense that was already trending up in the first place. They're playing hard for this coach. They're beating the Packers and knocking them out of the playoffs. And now here's this potential powerhouse receiver star maybe that's coming through. I'm super excited about it. I have spent a long time as a 49ers fan, watching the Packers just basically with a stranglehold on that division for nothing to come from it, right? They won a Super Bowl back in the day before I think I was legally allowed to drive, and I'm 35. And I think it's a good thing for the Lions to be coming in next year as like oh no, this is our division to lose. Like we are in charge now. I mean, you still got to go do it, but I love where they're at as a team.
That's kind of wild. Like when we think about it, like, is that the case? Because I mean, Brian Flores looks like it's a really good hire for the Vikings as their next DC. So that was their issue this year with Ed Donatel. Like that defense
was it the issue?
I mean, it was an issue. The offense was good. The offense was good. I know you're going to go the Kirk Cousins thing, but the offense was good. The
offense is always good every year, isn't it, though?
I mean, it was good enough to win double-digit games. Like, it was fine. Kirk Cousins is available. Mr. Availability, where it's like the man's going to play 17 games next year. Justin Jefferson's available. Yeah.
You tell us. You're the Lions guy, right? Are you worried about anything the Vikings will do?
Not necessarily next year. I think some of their roster is pretty barren. I think that they're gonna probably take a step back anyways, because like when from what their record was, I think like and this was mentioned by like 100 different people, but when you look at kind of their point differential compared to their actual wins loss, they didn't really match up. They ended up having a pretty poor point differential compared to like what the record was, and they won a lot of those 1-score games. But I still do think the Vikings are like a good team, because when you have Justin Jefferson, you're going to be in every game, and he's that special of a player where no matter if you're down 10 points entering the fourth quarter, he can completely take over a game like he did against the Bills this year.
I also think it's funny too. We overlook like there's some history now too, and there's some weird. I wonder if there's any bad blood, but like TJ Hawkinson just getting traded in the division mid-season is just such a weird trade that you never see in the NFL, of just being like, yeah, we're going to move on from Hawk. Like that's it. We're going to go ahead and say that's not working out, and you can go do your thing in Minnesota. Like that was just something that at the time you're like, that can't be right. Like what? Why would you trade him mid-season? You thought he was going to be a long-term fixture in this Detroit offense. Were you surprised that they cut bait with TJ that quick?
Yeah, and that was the second trade that they made with Minnesota in the matter of months. Like Minnesota let them trade up to get Jameson Williams. So it was really interesting to see two interdivision trades there. And I was surprised by that trade because I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Vikings GM, I think that there is an edge right now with signing tight ends that are, essentially putting up wide receiver 2 production, 2 extensions, because you have to pay them about $4 million less than what you would have to pay a wide receiver 2. Like the Christian Kirk contract is really infamous, but there's a lot of those contracts that these wide receiver 2s are signing that are getting pretty expensive. But when you look at a lot of the sharp teams around the leagues, like the Eagles with Dallas Goedert, the Chiefs with Travis Kelce, the 49ers with George Kittle, they've been kind of having this edge for a couple of years now. And I think some other teams are starting to catch up to it. But it ended up being a win-win kind of for both teams. The Lions were able to replace Hawkinson's production in the aggregate with Brock Wright and Shane Gilstra. And then the Vikings got someone who could really get them converted on third down when Justin Jefferson was getting double teamed.
It's going to be interesting what the Vikings do at wide receiver, because I think Thielen's probably going to get cut, it seems like. And if you cut Thielen, that's so much attention on Justin Jefferson that you're going to have to. I wonder if they invest a high pick at wide receiver, because this class is not. I mean, maybe they just signed DJ Chark because they're just trying to rebuild they're just going to keep pillaging the Lions of guys that they don't want anymore on the offensive side of the ball. I think we'll take DJ Chark.
We were all kind of waiting though for Adam Thielen's potential fall off, and I think he lasted a lot longer than I think some might have expected. So them finding a replacement is a long time coming anyways. I think they should have been planning for it.
Off-season expectations though for the Lions, what would you say is the biggest things that you're expecting this team to do to kind of get them and get things in order to clear up some of the stuff that limited them in 2022 that should not limit them in 2023?
Yeah, I think they're going to pour a lot of resources into their defense, and we haven't seen Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, splurge in free agency in a big way. He hasn't signed a big ticket free agent yet in his 2 years as Lions GM, but I think that might kind of break this year, where they might go out and get like a true veteran on defense in free agency, like a James Bradberry, just to have some pieces there, and then draft other players at that position that can kind of supplement that. Like if with the Lions 6 overall pick right now, the one that they got from the Rams, if I had to guess what position that pick was going to be, I would think cornerback. I think that
is there a corner you can take that high this year though?
I think Devin Witherspoon could be worth it.
Is he the Illinois kid?
Yes.
Okay. That's high though. High for an Illinois kid.
It would be high for corner. Maybe they trade back like somewhere later in the top 10 and end up taking a corner. But that's probably their biggest need. They have need at linebacker, at interior defensive lineman as well. So I think they'll also be some draft picks there. And then they also need to take some offensive guards as well. So I think those are probably the main areas of need. And then a want could be some type of quarterback in the draft if they fall in love with someone like an Anthony Richardson or a Will Levis. But there's still a lot of time to kind of see how that plays out.
What does the fan base want, do you think? Like when you talk with your Lions friends and interact with folks on Twitter, do they want to take a quarterback in the draft? Do they want to go and maybe look in free agency? Like, I guess it doesn't really make as much sense with Jared Goff performing the way he did. So if you do replace Goff through the draft, and like, I don't know, is there an impetus to do that, or do you get the sense that like Goff showed enough this past year that it's still we ride with Jared Goff, which is insane to say in 2023 with this Lions team?
Yeah, I think it like 60% of Lions fans do want to ride with Jared Goff next year. And then there's probably like 30% that want to draft a quarterback. I think like if you were to kind of split the difference between it, you could draft a quarterback at your second first round pick at number 18 overall and have them sit behind Goff for a year, but you'll have to kind of see how the board falls. I do think Goff will be the week 1 starter next year for the Lions, even if they do go out and get another quarterback in the draft.
Is it weird for the Lions to finally have the running back position figured out? Like, how do you as a Lions fan even, I guess, like cope with that? Because that's been like in your DNA for the last 20 years. Is like, let's figure out what's going to happen with the running back position, and you don't have to now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, I wish Stafford got the run game that the Lions ended up getting having this year. But it is interesting that I still think like it'll be really intriguing to see what they do with Jamal Williams. Like DeAndre Swift is a great running back, and Jamal Williams had a ton of touchdowns this year, but like his efficiency metrics weren't super great, but he's the best culture builder probably in the NFL. And I think a lot of people saw that on Hard Knocks or with the other clips the Lions are putting out. So how much they value culture will be interesting, because you'll have to overpay for Jamal Williams' production to keep him. But if you value his personality that much, which they might as well, like, I think it'll be kind of like cool to see like them give some money towards him, considering like how much players in the locker room like him.
I mean, the one thing that I've kind of looked at with the Lions is like the offense is not something you're worried about at this point, right? Picking at pick 18, if you look back at it, it's literally, I mean, go through it. It's Jair Alexander, Dory Jackson, what was it? Marcus Peters, Calvin Pryor, Eric Reed. Like, it was just all defensive backs for the most part. If you in recent memory, is there a non-offensive position or non kind of defensive back position that you think might actually make sense for the Lions?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier, interior defensive lineman I would probably make sense for them. They took Levi Ozarinke in the second round 2 years ago, and because of injuries and kind of like some poor play, he hasn't really panned out. So they could be looking for some type of 3 technique from that perspective, because Aleem McNeil kind of has that other spot down. He was a 3rd round pick in that same draft, and he's played pretty well, but they're weak at interior defensive linemen. So I think they could go with some type of defensive tackle there.
I like it. Well, Evan, your team, DeMeco Ryans takes the Texans job. So you have a DC spot to fill. You interviewed Steve Wilks this week. Vic Fangio staying in Miami, reportedly, and we'll see what happens around the league where else. But like, what is the current status for the Niners DC search? Could they still promote from within? What do you think happens there ultimately?
No, Chris Kasurek is one of the highest paid, I think, non-coordinator coaches in the NFL at the defensive line, and I think he needs to stay there. He's the best defensive line coach in the NFL, and I think just if you look at the production, especially from the types of players, some coming in from different teams, not playing well, some have left and then not played as well. He's got to stay there. That said, Ian Rappaport said today it kind of sounds like Steve Wilks is going to be, most likely going to be a fit for that position. I personally would absolutely love that. I've kind of really spent the last few years really hesitant about these young defensive coordinator hires, just to be aggressively wrong, right? If you look at Robert Saleh and how well he did, and then of course DeMeco Ryans, who I was really worried about, right? Former player, had some background in coaching, but like obviously this was a big jump for him, and he knocked it out of the park. He was one of the best defensive coordinators, probably the best last year. Now, what I will say is the 49ers defense seems to do really well, and they seem to win whenever Nick Bosa's in the game, healthy, playing. So whoever comes in, whether it be Steve Wilks or somebody else, I think they've got a pretty easy situation for them as long as Nick Bosa's playing. They've got to figure out the other side of the ball. Or not the other side of the ball, the other side of the line, because it was kind of a rotation with Samson Ebukam and, Jordan Wills.
Is Trent Williams back?
Who?
Is Trent Williams going to come back? Is he back?
Why are you saying that? Of course he's coming back.
Okay, I'm just asking. Like, he's getting up there. Like, what if he retired? Like, what if...
No. Okay, well, I will say this. I mean, I don't know if we would cover it down the road. I think it was Matt Barrows with the Sacramento Bee was talking to him and was like led the entire thing all the way. Like, well, you're getting a little old, and players at your age, when they're this age, start to think about retirement. It's obviously hard when you play 3 really long seasons because you've been in the playoffs through, blah, blah, blah. Are you thinking about it? Do you ever thinking about it? And he was just like, I mean, of course I think about it, but
he'll be 35 this year.
He basically was like, I'm nowhere near done, and I want to win a Super Bowl. Like like that was the context of me listening to it. And then of course you just saw headlines: Trent Williams considering retiring. Like, that's not what he said at all. Not even close. But no, I think the big thing, and it's really hilarious to me, is like, I said it today. I don't know if it's recency bias, but the NFL is really starting to crowd up with all of Kyle's former coaches. Like the entire, Kyle Shanahan scheme, whether it be Green Bay or Miami or the Jets or even Cincinnati, some of McVay's people, like it's starting to fill up. And I think the big issue for me is going to be, if you lose all of these kind of coaches, obviously you're going to see leaving with DeMeco Ryans going to Houston, Bobby Slowick, they were talking about our run game coordinator going to be the offensive coordinator and things like that. I do think we're getting to a point where it's like the 49ers just keep losing coaches because they keep getting head coaching hires. Thus they take with it. It's like, that's the thing that I worry about. Can you keep the momentum going?
The churn.
When you have all of that coaching talent leave. I'm more worried about that than really players. The Niners have, for the most part, a lot of people coming back, and the ones that are leaving might not be as big of a deal as we'd hope.
Do you share that sentiment, Tej?
I think that's a really good point. But I do think it is a testament to Kyle Shanahan's ability to kind of find these coaches. And he's had a really good track record of finding both offensive and defensive coordinators that have gotten a lot of success in San Francisco. And then that's led to a head coaching position. And so I do trust that he's going to be able to do that again. But I think something we eventually saw with like the Patriots, for example, was like there becomes a point where they're like the it's kind of been drained completely. Like all like this kind of like nucleus of talent that you have does become drained. But when you're going after someone like Steve Wilkes, like you mentioned, like I think that would be kind of a home run hire because that defense played really hard and well for him when he took over as head coach with the Panthers, and he's shown to be a really good defensive mind. I don't know if he'll be able to replicate what DeMeco Ryans was getting, because DeMeco Ryans was probably the best defensive coordinator in football this year, but he still has a ton of talent to work with between the defensive line, the linebackers, and some of the secondary pieces that they have there as well. So I would be kind of interested to see how that plays out.
I want to know, like, this is like a different take than I guess y'all would know, because like me being a big Tennessee guy, obviously, like I watched Steve Wilkes' defense get absolutely eviscerated by Tennessee 2 years ago. He was the DC at Mizzou, and he's been good everywhere defensively, right? Like the Carolina guy, like the defense are good. That Mizzou defense was horrific. Like Tennessee ran for like almost 400 yards, like right up the middle. Like the whole week we were like, this is what's going to happen. Tion Evans and Jabari Small is going to run it right up the Mizzou defense. Like they fired their defensive line coach after that game. Like it was so bad immediately after. It was like, all right, changes have to be made, because like Tennessee dropped, I think it was 60 something.
Is this just a way for you to bring up a Tennessee
No,
game?
the way, this is my thing. It's like the Steve Wilkes thing where I'm like, I don't understand why he had that blip. Like for whatever reason, the Mizzou year was terrible, and I don't understand why. I would love to hear his take on it. Like I want Steve Wilkes to tell me what happened that year.
Let's just realize that it's Mizzou, right? Like the talent level there is not exactly going to be otherworldly, right? And Tennessee's
they put out guys like William Moore, Falcons legend,
but let's
from 20 years ago.
The one thing I do want to say, and I before we get away from it, which I think we might be soon, is the 49ers have shown, and I think it's very important that, a lot of people were like, oh, well, the minority hiring is just like, oh, the interview process, they're just interviewing these people just to check the box for the Rooney Rule, et cetera, et cetera. I think Kyle, John Lynch, and Jed York too, deserve some credit too, are doing a really good job of showing, like, not only is it a good idea to hire minority coaches, but right now they are dominating the head coaching hires. And in fact, it might just show like how much teams have done a poor job in recent memory of realizing the potential there. Even like Anthony Lynn, right, who is probably going to be going to either a head coaching job eventually or maybe going to become a defensive coordinator soon. Like the 49ers are just happy happy to bring these coaches in, whether it be young coaching talent like DeMeco Ryans and giving him an opportunity, Robert Saleh too, or, maybe potentially Steve Wilkes, who's already got that experience. And they're over here benefiting for it. We traded a bunch of picks for Christian McCaffrey, right? We traded a bunch of picks for Trey Lance. But if you look at how many draft picks they have had this year, last year, and they'll have next year because of the comp picks, some people are like, oh man, maybe is it kind of weird that are they doing it for the comp picks? I mean, I don't know. They should be, because they're certainly showing that, yeah, you get comp picks or whatever, but you're also getting the best talent at the coaching position.
Yeah, and it's also, you're getting the comp picks because they're good at their job and they are getting picked up to go to be the head coach at Houston. So it's like one of those, yeah, you're getting the comp picks, but it's like they're not doing it for the comp picks. It's just a result of hiring well and finding talent and giving them opportunities, and then they get a bigger opportunity elsewhere. Like that's the goal.
I just think that should be spoken about more. I think it should be celebrated more. Like at first we were like, okay, it makes sense. Like give them comp picks if they, that makes sense. And the Niners are just out here showing that not only are they, they're building up these coaches. They're the best coaches that they are. Yeah. No one is. Have you seen the video of DeMeco Ryans coming into the Texans facility? It's impossible to watch it and not get goosebumps. Like, and I say this is like, I've not been a fan of the Texans, as an ownership for a long time, but like they were so happy. And you think about, if you look at like Mike McDaniel, when he went to Miami, like they were like, oh my God, we did it. The video of him on the PJ, right? Like flying in, like everyone's so excited. Like, I can't speak enough, and I don't want to come off as rambling, but it's just, I'm very happy to be a fan of a team that has done such a good job at showing how good minority coaches are and how much of an untapped potential it's been because of the stupidest reasons.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you said that. And I think like when teams, whether it's inherently or on purpose, like aren't hiring minority coaches, I hope that the 49ers and the success that they've had both as a team and those individual coaches have had kind of becomes a testament to that, because they've showed like, all right, if a lot of you guys aren't going to hire these really, really talented and innovative coaches that are going to be successful, no matter where they are, like we'll hire them. We'll be able to kind of get like their really like kind of coaching talent for a couple of years, and then we hope that they'll get into a head coaching position eventually. And it's been really nice to see. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I like it. Last thing on the Niners though, Evan. Looks like Brock Purdy is not going to be able to avoid surgery. I have this like image of like Brock going from doctor to doctor the last week, where he's like, nope, not going to work for me. I'm going to fly to Wisconsin and meet with this doctor. And they're like, I don't know. It seems like surgery. And he's like, nope, not going to work for me. I'm flying to Alabama. So what can you do for me? Can I avoid surgery? Not looking good, Brock. I think you're going to need to have surgery on this. I feel bad for the kid, because it seems like, I mean, it's just such a freak injury, right? Like this is just insane that he had this. It's the most Niners thing too, when we talk about just the Niners injury luck at quarterback over the years now, that like he has a pitcher injury in an NFC championship game, and the odds of that kind of injury and that kind of UCL tear is just so unlikely, just so minuscule, so insane to think about. Like that's a possibility for
a baseball injury.
Yeah, a baseball injury. Like what happens now? 6 months out, it looks like minimum. It's like 6 months he's gone, and then it's like the rehab. It seems like it's going to be, you have to be very careful getting him back on the field and getting him souped up. It's like this is now Trey Lance's show, and you heard Lynch talk about him and Kyle at that press conference. I was watching that, I guess last week now, where it's Trey Lance's show, and they're like, he has to stay healthy and prove to us that he can stay healthy, essentially. And you're like, man, I am so curious to see what happens this summer and this spring. But Trey Lance, there's no excuses now. Like you have no competition. There's no Jimmy Garoppolo. They nipped that in the bud. They're like, he's not back. Brock's like he's on the shelf. This is your time. Like this is only you. You have to stay healthy. You're gonna have the full opportunity to do this. Sucks for Brock, but I mean, this is it for Trey Lance, right?
So first off, I don't know if it's my innate like need and desire to defend a 49ers quarterback, because I've been doing it since Alex Smith. But I will not be changing my ways here. I don't know who the hell John Lynch thinks he is, saying he's got to show us that he's been healthy. Like, he got a little ding last year when he had to come in because Jimmy got hurt. And then he plays one game in a monsoon, literal monsoon. And the next game snaps his ankle in half because you ran him down the middle of the field. Like, does Brock Purdy need to show that he can stay healthy now because he ripped his shoulder? Like, I don't, what is that? Does Nick Bosa have to show that he can stay healthy because of the ACL tear? Like, what was the point of even saying that? It's an absurd thing. I never liked in the first place that the players were like, like the report came out from Matt Mayoko that the players will be upset if it's not Brock Purdy's show. Like, listen, I was just as happy as everyone else watching Brock Purdy do things that I've never seen done, breaking all likelihoods of no reason that should have ever been able to be accomplished by the last pick in the draft. I was overjoyed. It was incredible to watch. It was one of the most exciting things as a 49ers fan, as an NFL fan, that I've seen in a long time. It doesn't get better than Mr. Irrelevant playing really well in his first year and winning playoff games against the Cowboys. You know what I mean? Like, so I love to see that. But at the end of the day, I also want Trey Lance to get the shot that he deserves, right? Rightfully so. You drafted him knowing it was going to be a long approach. You weren't going to start him right away. You wanted to give him the year off. It's not his fault that he snapped his ankle. Like, what is he supposed to do? Is there a workout for that? Is there a stretch for that to make 300-pound linemen falling on your ankle not break it in half? Like, is he supposed to drink more milk? I don't really. So, like, listen, I would love, if Brock Purdy was healthy, I would love to have that position. When, before he got injured, that's what I was like saying. I was like, what I want is both QBs to be healthy, quarterback competition in camp, best quarterback wins, right? If it ends up being a Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson scenario and Brock Purdy beats him out, awesome, great. It'll be great for our cap space. But, like, that was what I wanted. And I think you're right. I think the longer that this news has gone with Brock Purdy not deciding whether or not he's going to have surgery, just guarantees to me that he's going to have Tommy John surgery, which is a year, basically, straight up.
I mean, I just don't see him being physical. Like, I don't know.
No, but I mean, not us though. Like, literally, it's Tommy John surgery means you're out a year. Like, that's pretty much what everyone has said. And from there as well, right? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I got Tommy John surgery and my arm feels great, right? Some had said it even felt better. Pitchers had said that their arm felt better. But the arm strength does take a hit. And Brock Purdy never was a cannon of an arm in the first place. It's a really bad situation for a really good story. I don't know if he goes in with Tommy John surgery. I don't know how it's like I said, it's just
if it's Tommy John, he's gone all next year. But if they do the other thing, which has also been reported, it's like if he can avoid it, he gets like an internal brace, which I don't really understand. And
it's just like self-healing or whatever. But like, if that was going to happen, they would have done that already. I think you're right. He's been going around trying to get second opinions because everyone is like, dude, your arm is ripped in half. Like, you need surgery.
Yeah.
So, Trey Lance is supposed to be
torn UCL. Like, I don't know.
Trey Lance said he's going to be healthy for OTAs and camp.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be enough. Right. So I don't want Josh Johnson. Listen, man, thank you for your services. You've been signed by the 49ers 674 times. I think that needs to be the last time. Okay. We're happy to have a fourth string quarterback there because it was necessary, but
now you got Jake Haener, the Fresno State legend, the Mr. Next Brock Purdy. I think he was the MVP in the Senior Bowl this week.
I know he looked good. He looked good. A lot.
But here's the thing about that. When people do this, it drives me nuts because they do the thing where who's the next Brock Purdy? Okay. The thing about Brock Purdy was no one saw Brock Purdy coming. There's no who's the next guy. Like, the whole point of this is that it happens very rarely and it just pops up where it's like Mr. Irrelevant became a great player. Like, There is no next Brock Purdy. Like, it's going to be another 20 years.
I will say this. It is impossible to have there be another Brock Purdy, but it is not impossible to recreate the situation because the situation has not changed. They will still have Deebo Samuel. They will still have Brandon Ayuk. They will still have George Kittle. They will still have Trent Williams. They will still have Kyle Shanahan, right?
Christian
McCaffrey. Sorry, listen, man, I'm still getting used to that one myself. But those players are still there. That offense is still there. I think the offensive line is going to get better, right? Those are some young players in there this year. So I do think that I said it myself. I think they should take with one of their third-round comp picks, they should draft a quarterback. Bill Belichick drafted a quarterback every year that he had Brady, basically. So I don't see anything against that. I'm just kind of worried about like what you do. Like you got to bring in someone off the street. I don't want Sam Darnold on my team. What do you do?
I don't know. I think they're going to draft somebody. I'm going to guess they draft somebody.
Do?
I mean, they're I don't know. What do you think, Tej?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I really enjoyed that discussion from you guys. And I think, your knowledge on the 49ers is really interesting. And I think I would roll with Trey Lance as QB1 next year, but like Jacoby Brissett is going to be available and could be like really good in that offense, especially if he played like he did with the Browns this year or some type of journeyman like that. So I think that's like the direction I would go with if for backup quarterback, where you can kind of get a quarterback that's okay with being a backup, but has shown like an ability to be pretty efficient in other systems before as just kind of like a fail safe there in case like the whole Lance experiment doesn't work out. I think the 49ers were going to pursue Brady if he was available. Yeah. And so that kind of put some foil in their plans there. So I think someone else that they can have just in case the whole Lance thing doesn't work out.
Interesting. I think your point about Brissett's actually really smart. I hadn't personally thought of that yet. But if you're Brissett, that's probably best case scenario, right? Yeah. You're like, I can beat Trey Lance out. Mm-hmm. And you're like, why wouldn't I want to play with all these players and Kyle Shanahan? Like, that's probably a situation where you're like, get me in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
I like it. Well, we'll see. A lot of offseason. We'll see how the Niners approach the draft and all that good stuff. But it will be interesting nonetheless, because if nothing else, there's one thing we can count out with the Niners. It's that their quarterback situation is always going to be interesting in the Kyle Shanahan era. Never a dull moment with the Niners. This is, I think, one of the more under-talked about. And I think Cowboys fans, if I'm a Cowboys fan, I've already gone nuclear over the last 2 weeks of what's happened here. Kellen Moore mutually agrees to part ways with the Cowboys, immediately picked up by the Chargers to take over that offense with Brandon Staley in LA and work with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, Justin Herbert. Like, when I saw Brian Schottenheimer was rumored to get elevated, and as someone who has watched a lot of Brian Schottenheimer over the years, to get the OC stuff, it's like he's not going to call plays. All right, well, he's in that position where if Mike McCarthy struggles to call plays, which he struggled last time he was calling plays in Green Bay, then it's going to go down the ladder. And that next man up is Brian Schottenheimer, who last time was calling plays was one of the worst offenses we have seen in the NFL in the last couple of years with Jacksonville and the dumpster fire that was the Urban Meyer, Brian Schottenheimer era in 2021. And look at the difference with Doug Peterson coaching Trevor Lawrence versus what it was looking like 2 years ago. And it's just night and day. Jacksonville wins the division, just all kinds of great stuff. They get to the AFC divisional round. They look great. Like things are heading in the right direction in Jacksonville. I cannot believe what's happened this offseason for Dallas. Like, you were so close. Your defense is elite. Micah Parsons is a star. You have Dak, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Pollard who's broken out. The offensive line should be healthier going into next year. Like, you should be in position where you're like, hey, you can compete in the NFC East again. Are we sure the Eagles can run it back like that? They should have been a contender next year. Like, this was supposed to be a gap year. They kind of overachieved based on, like, they had to make some difficult decisions with Amari Cooper and company. And they were like, we'll have more cap space going into next year. Like, next year is the flip. Like, this is kind of an in-between year. Then you move on from Kellen Moore, and it's going to be Mike McCarthy calling plays, and then Brian Schottenheimer as OC. I cannot believe that this is the offseason Dallas is having. I would be absolutely out of my mind. apoplectic for me if I'm a Dallas fan, Tage. Do you share that sentiment? Like, they're out of their absolute minds doing what they're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like how you laid that out. I think I liked Kellen Moore. I thought he was creative. I thought from like an efficiency standpoint, their offense ranked really highly every year. He even got some juice out of Cooper Rush when he had to play. But the only thing that would help me sleep at night, I think, if I was a Dallas fan, is I'm with you that I wouldn't be happy with how things have gone. But I think Dak is so mentally up there with some of the top quarterbacks in the league that he can kind of keep this offense afloat on his own. If you allow me to get like a little nerdy for a second here.
Yeah.
So I built this model basically one time that tried to see how much influence a quarterback had on their own rushing game. So like obviously Lamar Jackson showed up number one, like even when he's not running with the ball specifically, him just handing off the ball has so much gravity that it takes linebackers with him that helps the running backs. Dak was number 2 on this list. And when I kind of went back to see what made him so successful, he's at the line of scrimmage more than almost any quarterback in the league, switching protections, killing plays and audibling to other plays. And he kind of does so much from a mental perspective that I think that it makes his offensive coordinators look better from time to time. And that could help Brian Schottenheimer and Mike McCarthy call plays here in Dallas, is that Dak is pre-snap so mentally good that it can kind of like smooth over some of the bumps that Dallas might have next year as they transition.
But do you think that's ultimately what happens? That they're okay and Dak does just he's good enough and smart enough as just a offensive mind and quarterback that they don't take a major step back? Or are you betting on a major step back and that McCarthy's fired and Dan Quinn's the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys in 2024?
Yeah, I don't think it'll necessarily be a major step back. I mean, with Dak, their offense was very effective this year, and it probably won't be as much next year. But if they do kind of fix some of their issues, especially getting a second wide receiver in there, that can really make a difference if they choose to spend a high pick on that or use some of the salary cap that they might get from a Ezekiel Elliott restructure or cut or something. Like, I think that there are paths for this Dallas offense to stay at the same level or get better. It's just probably less than a 50% chance because of some of the moves they've made, like you mentioned.
I just don't see
Listen, guys. Listen.
This is Evan's Super Bowl right here. He loves nothing more than the demise of the Cowboys.
It is the most Cowboys thing ever. I don't want to just be this loud, eccentric person every time like a subject comes up about football. Like, that's not my goal. But like literally, this is so exciting for me. Brian Schottenheimer is was a coach for the Seahawks, right? He's been bad everywhere he's gone. I don't know, was it someone from the Ringer, I think, the other day?
Oh, Roger Sherman, yeah.
Yeah, Sherman posted like how he's just been bad everywhere he goes. And it's the most Cowboys thing on earth to have a young former quarterback come in, be an offensive coordinator, immediately find success. Obviously, it's not perfect, but they find success. Like you said, they're doing things with Cooper Rush. Obviously, there was wins there and there was things to build off. And what do? They get rid of him. He immediately gets hired. And then they bring in an old, washed coach. Like, it's just, if I didn't hate the Cowboys so much, I would feel bad for their fans. But it's impossible to feel bad for their fans. But really, I think Tage has like more optimism than me. I don't even know that, I don't think a wide receiver 2 is going to fix it. You couldn't bring in a clone copy of CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that's going to fix it. Like, they have a lot of things that they have to figure out with Zeke. Are they going to cut Zeke? What do they want to do? The offensive line is getting older. Like, the defense is obviously their strong suit, right? Being able to have Micah Parsons is like that foundational piece in the same way that Nick Bosa can be. But listen, when the defense is good, fix the offense. And that's not how you fix the offense.
It's funny, like what Connor Liv say on Twitter said, quote, Dak having to spend 2/3 of his career with Scott Linehan and Brian Schottenheimer as OCs makes me want to vomit. That's just where Cowboys fans are at the moment. Like, just
Right.
not great. The Super Bowl, though, is happening this Sunday. Very excited about that. Where Super Bowl Sunday is here. Kind of weird not having any football to watch this weekend, and just kind of you feel like you're missing. Like, I would check and be like, oh, this is weird. Like, it's just the Pro Bowl does not count. I did not watch 1 second of the Pro Bowl. I will not be watching the Pro Bowl. Not my jam.
Although I do think that what they're doing is better. I didn't watch it either.
It's just not for me. It's not. I don't know. It's just I'm not the target. I'm not the target audience. I got Mayor of Kingstown to watch. I gotta watch Mayor of Kingstown, which is an absolute banger of 40 minutes every single Sunday night on Paramount Plus. It's my jam.
Hold on? Is that the Hawkeye show?
Yes.
Maybe shout out to him. I hope he's
Jeremy Renner's show. But that's it's
I know
fantastic. It is so much fun. I'll watch anything Taylor Sheridan puts together. Like I'm gonna watch it. Like it's gonna be a banger. But I am curious. Let's start here. The stats that have your attention, Tej, going into this game. What is the stuff that you've outlined, that you've kind of run the numbers on, you've been thinking about, that stand out the most to you with the Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl matchup?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first one would be how the Eagles' third down sack rate and just their pass rush in general is like leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the league. We saw this most recently with how often they got pressure on the 49ers, but this has been a season-long thing. And the Chiefs' offensive line, from an interior offensive line perspective, their center and their 2 guards are really good and have played well this whole year, but their tackles have been susceptible. And we all remember the Super Bowl where the Buccaneers pass rush that was as good as this Eagles pass rush kind of took apart the Chiefs tackles and made it a really tough day for Mahomes. And that's what I'm going to keep an eye on the most in this game, is how the Chiefs end up kind of making sure that doesn't happen again. Like when that game happened and that Super Bowl happened, the Chiefs kind of vowed that this would never happen again. And they made moves accordingly so, and got offensive linemen in there through the draft and through free agency. And it's worked out.
Orlando Brown.
Orlando Brown. But Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley haven't played particularly well this year, I think. And so I think that there's going to be a decent amount of 12 personnel from the in this game. Travis Kelce, I don't know if you can count him as part of the 12 personnel since he's basically just a big receiver. But I think we'll see a lot of Noah Gray, a lot of Blake Bell, some chip help, Isaiah Pacheco staying in to block more often than he's kind of going out into the flat, just to make sure that that pass rush doesn't get there under 2.5 seconds, because that's the path for the Eagles defense to really stop the Chiefs in this game.
So you're more concerned about the Chiefs stopping the front seven of the Eagles more so than Chandler Jones disrupting Jason Kelce and the interior of the Eagles offensive line, because we saw it last year with Aaron Donald, where he just absolutely wrecked the Cincinnati offensive line and really shifted that game in a multitude of ways. And I think it's fair to say he got robbed of a MVP in the Super Bowl last year. I know you're a big Stafford guy, but I think Aaron Donald and what he did in the Super Bowl played a big role in the Rams ultimately winning there. But I guess just because we just saw Chandler Jones do it again, and he's got, 11, 12 sacks this year. And Chris Jones has just been awesome all season long. And I'm very curious to see how he navigates the best offensive line he'll have faced this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a really good point. But what I kind of come back to is that defense is a weak link system, and offenses have control over who they can target and who they can devote resources to. And I think the Eagles will devote a lot of their resources towards Chris Jones and kind of pick apart some of the other weak links, like the Nick Bolton kind of led linebacker core that the Chiefs have, or some of their secondary pieces like the rookie starting on the outside. And when you look at the Eagles, the really interesting thing about them is they have the largest spread of their neutral game pass rate of any team in the league. So they vary their neutral game pass rate the most of any team in the NFL. And they can kind of pick and choose which games they want to be heavy run, heavy Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts design rush games, or games where it's A.J. Brown just dunking on people 30 yards down the field, Devontae Smith over the middle of the field, catching passes for first down. So I think the Eagles staff, their coaching staff and kind of their analytics team is so smart, where they might be able to just pick and choose their spots in this game to try to mitigate Chris Jones.
That's interesting. I mean, your guy got involved. Brandon Ayuk predicted the Chiefs will expose the Eagles. Evan, do you agree with your guy Brandon's assessment there?
So, I mean, the Chiefs have always been the team that I was most terrified of, and that's just because of Patrick Mahomes. You can make fun of me all you want, but the Brock Purdy injury doesn't happen, the Niners would have beat the Eagles, and it wouldn't have been close. The fact that Brock Purdy ripped his arm in half, and then the Niners defense proceeded to make them go 3 and out 3 times in a row after that was a pretty good indicator of where that defense was and how they played well.
Jalen Hurts was not good in that game, and you take away that Devontae Smith non-catch early on, that game was going in a different way.
I mean, if you look at they had 3. So the one thing I will say was their short yardage goal line rushing was pretty effective, right? Because when they got there, even though they got there because of mistakes by the 49ers, whether it be fumbles or penalties, whatever, when they got there, they were able to punch that ball in. Now, is that a matter of trying to keep up the momentum after your quarterback just got injured? Is it a matter of trying to keep up the momentum with everything that's going on? I don't know. But I think the Chiefs can see there's a little bit in there to watch and see kind of how do you get this right when you play the Eagles. The Eagles are a really good team. They've got a really good defense. But I am not trying to be a homer. I genuinely thought the 49ers were a better team. And I think they were.
I think the 49ers thought that too. Based on Brandon Ayuk saying that, it seems like the Niners came away from that thing. And that's why I think they're so frustrated at the end, where it's like, if we have a healthy Purdy, we win this game.
100%. And I think it was obvious. And the Niners are a second half team all year. They had been, and they were playing really well against them in the first half. I do think that would have happened. But to answer your question, I thought that the Philadelphia Eagles and the Niners had a lot of similarities when it comes to the defense, the offensive weapons, things like that. And I think the Niners were a better team. And I was still worried about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I'm still taking the Chiefs. I think it'll be a good game. But I have a very strong feeling that the Eagles are not going to win this game. And they have all the ego in the world, all the confidence they have. It feels like in their head, they've already won it. And just the way the fans talk about it, the way the team, the coach, everyone involved, they're like, oh no, we've won the Super Bowl. And I think the Niners had a little bit of that when they played the Chiefs that one year. We all saw how that happened. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and we haven't seen anything like him since Tom Brady, and it's not even the same. They're just both really good. But the nature in which Patrick Mahomes is very good is insane. And the fact that he was able to do what he did, last week on essentially a high ankle sprain, which is supposed to take you out for weeks and months, right? It's terrifying. And now he has 2 more weeks of rehab and healing. So I'll be taking the Chiefs. And if I do, I will be the most miserable human being on earth. For as long as possible, yelling at anybody that I can remotely see wearing green or from Philadelphia.
On the flip side, though, if you had to outline, Tej, how this game is won by the Eagles, how is it won? If you had to say this is why the Eagles beat the Chiefs, why do you think it? Your clairvoyant hat on right now, how did they ultimately beat them? We were talking about this on the pod next Monday. What happened?
Yeah. First, I think, again, what I was mentioning earlier, I think their pass rush gets home often and early and kind of puts the Chiefs into a hole. And kind of getting from that, if the Eagles go up early in the game, I do kind of think that they have a better chance to win than most teams when they get a lead in a similar situation, because the Eagles are set up so well to play with a lead. They have one of the most efficient rushing offenses in recent NFL history. It's up there with the 2018 Rams and the 2016 Falcons and some of the really, really good rushing offenses that we've seen lately. So they can kind of control the game from that perspective if they have to. And then we've also seen Jalen Hurts ranks top 5 in expected points added per play when playing with a lead this season, but ranks below average when not playing with a lead. So that when the Eagles are in situations where you don't have a tell of if they're going to run or a pass, they have been really, really good in those situations. And I think that kind of speaks to the testament of how well their offense is schemed up, alongside with what Hurts is able to do as a rusher, what the other running backs have been able to do from a rushing perspective, and then Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith being so good after the catch. And I think all of those things together will kind of come together for the Eagles to win this game. And another kind of angle on that would be if they, and it's, it's easy to say like if they get turnovers, but especially if they get interceptions, and they've had the tendency to do that this season, I think if they're able to pick off Mahomes, especially in the first half, that could be another way or path that they end up winning this game.
So it sounds like we might know pretty early on who's going to win this game. Like if the Eagles are up 14-0 after the first quarter, it's like, oh, they're going to sit on it, and the Chiefs are kind of going to get the life squeezed out of them from this Eagles team. But it's like if the Eagles jump up, or if the Chiefs jump up early and they surprise them, and Hurts has a bad fumble or something and off an RPO, and like the Chiefs are up 14-0, you're like, oh, this is over on the Chiefs side of things, because they're going to run it up, and Jalen Hurts is not going to play well from behind in this one. Is that kind of where you're at?
See, I think so, and I feel more confident about if the Chiefs go up early that they should be able to hold on to the lead. But Mahomes might just be that good, where even he's able to come back against this Eagles team that basically no one's been able to come back against when Jalen Hurts has been starting this year. So I don't know. I think like everything I think I know about football, and like all kind of like the rules or the paths that we see, like Mahomes breaks all of them. So yeah, we'll have to see when it actually comes out on Sunday.
Listen, man, the 49ers had a pretty good defense in 2019. I think we can all agree on that. And their data has never been more important than it is right now in 2023 when it comes to the NFL. But there's no way to quantitate what is Patrick Mahomes. And the fact that I am even able to say this and talk about this without crying is impressive, because like I said, Patrick Mahomes will break your heart. I promise you.
I also he's going to break the mold too. I don't know what the data is, but like Jalen Hurts is going to get paid soon, but like Patrick Mahomes got paid, right? Like he has a certain percentage of the cap now. And when he won it in 2019, or what was it? 2019, right? Or 18? Was it 18 or 19?
2019.
2019, yeah. The contract extension had not kicked in yet, right? Like he was still on that really good rookie contract as a quarterback. We just don't see this very often anymore. Like Stafford just did it this past year with Los Angeles and what he was making with the Rams. But generally speaking, you don't see it. Like Joe Burrow was in the final group, and he obviously not making that big money yet. And then Jalen Hurts, and then Brock Purdy, and then Trey Lance, if it had been Trey Lance, was not in that group either. So it's just, we don't see this very often from these quarterbacks, where it's like Dak, the Cowboys are running into this, where it's like we paid him a lot of money, and it's like it just gets hard. It gets significantly more difficult to win when you have to pay the quarterback what you have to pay the quarterback around the league. And the Ravens have put it off for as long as humanly possible, because they know what's coming when they lock in Lamar Jackson long term and everything else, and they're already struggling to get enough help at the wide receiver spot around him. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see if Mahomes can pull it off and this group can pull it off, especially the year after making a tough decision on Tyreek Hill and just being like, we have to move on from Tyreek, and we're gonna be fine. We're gonna reinvent our offense. But like Mecole Hardman's out, he's on IR. They won't have him. They're having to use a special teamer at wideout in the slot this past or 2 weeks ago now, and I'm very interested to see what ultimately unfolds. But it seems like you're leaning Chiefs. Like I'm saying Chiefs probably 34-20 Chiefs. I think they win a little bit comfortably here. Do you share that sentiment, Tej, or are you gonna pick the Eagles?
I'm leaning Eagles right now.
Okay.
But I mean, it's so tough, I think, to pick this game. I just think that the Eagles roster is so stacked that they should be able to kind of win this, especially like with all the stuff that we were just talking about. But I don't know, maybe I'll flip as we get close to the game, now that I've heard your guys' opinions. And I respect both of you and how you kind of approach evaluating football games as well. So that's not locked in. But right now, if I had to pick, like gun to my head, I would take the Eagles.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I completely understand that pick. Like that roster is one of the most stacked rosters we've seen in a Super Bowl for a long time.
it's definitely the better roster, top to bottom. The Eagles. It's so funny. I just feel so dumb to say. I'm like, I just don't see Mahomes losing to Jalen Hurts. But like, I don't see Mahomes losing to Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. I think Jalen Hurts is an awesome story. I love Jalen Hurts. What we saw this past week, and I just think he's going to have to go throw for throw and have to do a little bit more to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in this game. And it's not the same. Like Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence and Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. Like there's just certain guys around the league that can go throw for throw, and I just trust more in a win or go home game. We haven't seen him with Jalen Hurts. He hasn't been pushed, and part of it's not his fault. Like they were the number one overall seed, so you get a bye, and then you beat the Niners under those circumstances, and he wasn't great in that game. So we haven't really seen him on the big stage like this.
No. Listen, you're so nice. He was ass. He was not good. He was really not good. They had him in a vice grip. He threw from a collective 40 yards between Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, two of the best receivers, probably the best tandem of receivers in the NFL. He had them. Yeah. But I will say the one thing that is so frustrating for me is there's no rhyme or reason to how any of this works. As a 49ers fan, I'm like, they just need to get a quarterback. They need a quarterback, but it's like Joe Burrow he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they can't get it done. And then you look, it's like Matt Stafford. They get a quarterback, and then they win. And it's like the Niners can't win. They don't have it. It's like, I just wish there'd be some parity, and there's none. It doesn't you can have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and still lose. You cannot and win unless you're the Niners. The only constant is Patrick Mahomes.
And I think basically every Super Bowl participant or Super Bowl winner for at least the past 5 years either has a Hall of Fame quarterback that's towards the end of the contract extension that they signed. And that way their cap hit is lower relative to the league. Patrick Mahomes is the 5th highest paid quarterback in the league this year. He's not the highest paid, right? Because of kind of the way they spread out money in his contract. Or you have a quarterback on a rookie deal or some type of deal like that. So that's kind of what it is. That's why if the Chiefs end up winning the Super Bowl, I think a Super Bowl winner hasn't won taking up more than 13% of their cap.
That's what
Yeah, and in a while now, and Mahomes took up 17%, right? So that would kind of break the mold. And so I agree with you. He might just be that good where they were able to trade away Tyreek Hill, and he's able to take up that much money alongside Chris Jones also taking up a lot of money there as well, where they're still able to win it because of just the level that him and Kelsey and Andy Reid are able to get their pass game to.
I like it. Evan, your final prediction on the Super Bowl. What do you think it actually is? What's your official prediction?
I don't think it's going to be an offensive blowout. I don't think anyone's blowing anybody out. Oh man, it breaks my heart. But yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to the Chiefs and Niners game, right? You're going to have a really good defense. And then I think at the end, Patrick Mahomes goes Super Saiyan and they win. So what the score is, I'm not really big on score predictions because the probability is always so low. But I'll just say, let's say 20 to 31.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's double digits. I think they ultimately what's the spread? I don't even know what it is right now.
Philly 1.5.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely that's just not a gambling man, but I would absolutely put significant money if I was that kind of guy.
Significant.
Yeah, on that one. There you go. Tage, what can the good folks check out from you across the interwebs, podcast, writing front, everything else? What would you like to plug as we wrap up here tonight?
Yeah, thanks for letting me have the opportunity to do this. I have my podcast that I do with my friend Arjun Menon, and it's called Take the Points, and you can check it out on Apple or Spotify. And then you can follow me on Twitter at TEJFB Analytics, so Tage FB Analytics, as well as my the Twitter account that I kind of run for the place I work, Sumer Sports, which is just Sumer Sports, SUMER, and then sports. So
it's great. I'm excited for it. And I think the future's bright. Eric and Thomas are great on their show. And I'm a big Thomas guy. He seems cool. Thomas seems like a fun hang and a cool dude.
Yeah, no, he's a lot of fun. And a lot of the stuff that they're working on right now is super cool there. And Thomas has done a really good job like setting it all up.
Yeah, there you go. Great style, great glasses, great frames. Like he's got a good look. The Silver Fox. He's I miss Thomas Dimitrov over here in Atlanta. Evan Sowards, all that good stuff. Anything you want to plug as we wrap up here tonight?
Yeah, I mean, definitely make sure to check out the Take the Points podcast and of course the Chase Thomas podcast. And shout out to my late dog Titus. I finally got that up. I moved some things around. Pretty happy about
Very
that.
Cool.
That's what I got in my life.
Is it a photo or is it a drawing?
Oh no, it's like a photo of him that they kind of like artistically like made into a painting type.
Very
thing.
cool.
I don't know, but no, that's all I got to promote. My dog Titus. Other than that, take care, everyone. Really good chatting with you, Taj. It was really great.
Yeah, it was great meeting you, man. And we'd love to have you back on in the future. Enjoy the week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm now joined by a first-timer. He covers a team that was really good as I was growing up, and just it's been a little bit more rough in my late 20s and early 30s here. But San Antonio Spurs, it's all about Victor Wembanyama. It's all about Victor Wembanyama right now. I assume for Spurs writers, Spurs staffers, Spurs front office folks, Spurs fans, it's like the bottoming out has happened, where it's like you were a contender, and then you make the Kawhi Leonard trade, and then DeMar DeRozan keeps this thing kind of afloat, where you're a pseudo playoff team, and then it gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and now you're at this full-on rebuilding stage, what we haven't seen in so long, and it's just kind of wild to see where the Spurs are. I do a double take sometimes when I'm doing my daily just check-ins in the standings, and you're like, man, it's just so weird to see the Spurs at the bottom of the Western Conference. It looks wrong. But here to talk all things Spurs, we got Noah Magaro-George. Noah, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm great. I'm ready to talk about the Spurs. I'm excited to talk to you about some basketball. So thanks for having me, and I'm really excited to get this thing on the road.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the first thing I want to ask you about, Noah, is in terms of on the court, what would you say has been the best thing about the Spurs strictly on the court? None of the draft stuff, none of the off the court stuff, just like what you've seen through 50 or so games this year, right before the All-Star break. Like this has been the most encouraging thing about the way the Spurs have played this year.
Definitely. So I think a lot of people look at this team, whether you're, a diehard fan or you're a casual fan, or maybe you're just an NBA fan and you don't care about the Spurs. You look at the record and you go, wow, this team sucks. They're not good. They're not fun to watch. I had no interest in a 14, 15 win team. But I think the thing that's easily discounted is the way in which they have tanked. It's, to me, very unique compared to other teams. You look at teams like the Thunder a year ago, the Houston Rockets, the Pistons this year, who they're losing on purpose. They're not putting out functional lineups. They're not really trying to do anything except get a top pick. And while that's the Spurs goal, right? They're trying to get that lottery pick. They're trying to win the lottery. They want Scoot Henderson or a Victor Wembanyama. They have fielded lineups that are trying to win, that are competitive. Most games, they are in the game for 1, 2, 3 quarters, and then they kind of fall apart in the fourth quarter. They're the worst fourth quarter team in the NBA. So I think just watching them foster development rather than just say, go play and do whatever you want, and there's actual structure and you can see that development. It is tangible on a nightly basis, from guys like Keldon Johnson to Malachi Branham to Devin Vassell, who's out right now but has been really great this season. I think that's been the best thing, because it's not just them going out there and giving up. It's them trying to win, and Coach Popovich still trying to hold these, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds, early 20-somethings accountable, which I think is really great for their development and their long-term outlook. So that's been the best part of the season for me.
What is Keldon Johnson's ceiling? Now that we've had a couple of years, have you adjusted? Do you feel like you have a pretty good idea of like where we're at with Keldon and what he can fully be? Is it fully maximized for you as to what he is? Do you think the staff has a pretty good feel in front office at this point, or do you think there's still untapped potential with him as a bigger star than maybe some folks maybe were like, oh, it's a possibility, but it's kind of changed to more role player type vibes with Keldon?
I think fans, for the most part, like Spurs fans, they've kind of had Keldon Johnson kind of like shoved down, their throats and kind of thrust in their face because he's kind of the de facto face of the franchise now that they don't really have a superstar, an all-star, or anything like that. But to be completely honest with you, I've been watching Keldon since he played at Oak Hill High School. I watched him at Kentucky. I've watched him in the G League. I've watched him with the Spurs. He's a solid player, but in my estimation, just from all the tape that I've watched on him, the numbers, he's not a good defender. And he's probably like your third to fourth best player on a championship team on the offensive end. So he's a guy who can't really create his own shot that well. He gets downhill and he's good at attacking the rim. He's pretty good at getting to the free throw line, but he's not a guy who's pulling up off the dribble. He's not a guy who has a dynamic handle. He's not someone who, has a lot of shot versatility, coming off screens or shooting off the move or, catch and shoot in transition. He's mostly a stationary 3-point shooter. And whereas last season he was shooting 40% from three almost, this season the numbers have dropped because teams know what he is. He's the main focus, and it's hard for him to get an open shot just standing still. So kudos to him for doing the most with what he's got, which is not very much with the Spurs team, obviously. But to me, he's may not be at his ceiling, but I don't really see a superstar player or a perennial all-star. I see a guy who, if the Spurs are winning and everything's firing on all cylinders and they're one of the best teams in the West, then maybe he's like your second all-star, like a Drew Holiday, who gets in because your record is so good. But on his own merits, probably not. And I know that probably hurts Spurs fans to hear, and I get backlash for that sometimes, but love him. Just, I think it's better to be realistic with what he is than lie to the fans.
Interesting. What's been the biggest difference between watching Dejounte Murray be the guy for years and then watching this team this year without Dejounte? Because, I'm a Hawks guy and watched a lot of Dejounte up close. And I love Dejounte. He's been the best player on the Hawks all season long. And he's just so much fun to watch on defense. And, I just make it a note to, every game is, he's who I follow around most nights because he's just so active and he's so smart with his hands. And he's long and he's fun. He's so fun in transition. He's shooting the ball really well of late. He loves the mid-range, but the three-point shot has been there. Good leader. I don't know. I've really enjoyed the Dejounte experience thus far here in Atlanta. But for you, watching this team without Dejounte this year, how weird has it been just him not being there and having different guys have to lead the show because he was just the de facto, kind of like what you were saying with Keldon, he was the de facto guy for so many years now.
Yeah, this may kind of come off as strange, but it's been refreshing not having him in San Antonio or a player like DeMar DeRozan in San Antonio as well. Those players are more heliocentric where they're the system and everyone else revolves around them. They get the team into their sets. That's probably not his role in Atlanta. I think he kind of trades turns with Trae Young from what I've seen, the 3 or 4 games I've seen this season. But it's been refreshing in that they've moved to a more motion-based offense that's equal opportunity. A lot of guys are getting touches. A lot of guys are getting shots. A lot of guys are getting primary ball handling reps. And that's been really nice. That fosters developments for guys like Keldon Johnson, guys like Devin Vassell, Trey Jones, Malachi Branham, Blake Wesley. You see all these guys who, if Dejounte was still here, they're probably running everything through him because to be honest, he's really not that great of an off-ball player. He's been better shooting the 3 ball in Atlanta this season, but still shooting below league average from 3 in Atlanta, still shooting below league average from the field in Atlanta. I love Dejounte. I think he's got a great work ethic, and I think he's done a lot to turn himself from a guy who was overlooked into an all-star. But I also think he's fairly overrated. Defensively, he comes up with a lot of steals, but I think sometimes fans kind of overlook or overrate the value of steals. They see activity and they equate that with defense, but a lot of times he's a gambler, right? He's going to gamble for steals. If he doesn't get it, he's out of position. He's leaving everybody else scrambling. And you look at his numbers, he's allowed his opponents over the last 3 seasons to shoot above 50% from the field, and that's just not very good. So as much as I love Dejounte, I think he's a phenomenal player. I do think he's become a little bit overrated, but happy to see that he's actually on a team that's competing because I think in San Antonio, he was miscast as the number 1 guy. And I think he was also being done a disservice that if he had stayed here, he would have just had to, tough it out for a rebuild, be carrying a team to the play-in. And to be honest, the play-in is not fun. Unless you're a team that's really on the cusp of breaking into that contender category, the play-in is nothing. It means nothing. So I'm happy for him that he's in a new place with better teammates. And I hope the best for him because he really was a pleasure to cover while he was here in San Antonio.
I like it. Jakob Poetl, do you think he's ultimately moved this week?
That's a really tough question to answer, and that's a great question. Some people probably value him as a piece that you can add that pushes you over the hump, maybe. And I think the Spurs value him as someone who can offer them stability as they rebuild, because he doesn't really need the ball a lot, but he can also be used as a playmaking hub from the high post. He's one of the best rim protectors in the NBA this season. He covers for a lot of the mistakes on this young team. I just don't know that you're going to get that from anyone else on the roster. If you move Poetl and he started for you all season, even though Collins has been one of the best backups in the league, I think there's still a pretty steep drop off there. And I think you move him and you're even worse, which, okay, that may be the goal, to be worse, to get the better lottery pick. But at the end of the day, with Jakob, you're a bottom 3 team. Without Jakob, you're still a bottom 3 team. You can afford to re-sign him. He likes it in San Antonio. So I wouldn't be surprised if they, hold out because they want 2 first-rounders, and they may not get that. And if they do, pull the trigger, do it. Grab those assets. But if they're not going to get that, they might as well hold on to him, because it's not like they can't afford to pay him. They've got more than enough cap space.
But do you think, what is your gut telling you? If you had to say one way or the other after the deadline, do you think he's a Spur or no? Do you think they get what they want? Okay.
I think so. I just don't see, I love Poetl, and I do think that they're right to value him for 2 first-rounders. But if you're a contending team, giving up 2 first-rounders for Jakob Poetl, who is going to be entering free agency this summer, could just walk for nothing. That's a lot. That's a lot to give up for what essentially is going to amount to a half a season rental. And I just don't see teams doing that. Maybe someone's desperate, maybe the Lakers, but even the Lakers, they have
Thomas
Anthony
Bryant's
Davis,
playing well,
they have
and,
Thomas Bryant. Exactly. So it's a tough situation. Maybe the Kyrie thing.
LA makes a lot of sense. The other LA, the Clippers, but it's I don't know what the Clippers would send. They're not sending 2 firsts.
And they still have
Jakob.
Zubac, right? Is he going to be coming off the bench? I really don't know what they're going to do there. So my gut tells me he's still in San Antonio after the trade deadline, but you never know. Crazier things have happened.
Devin Vassell is better at this thing this year than he's ever been.
Self-creation. That was one of the main things that I was pretty skeptical of him coming out of Florida State University. He was a guy who was mostly a guy who comes off of screens, pin downs, curls around screens, can catch and shoot a little bit. Didn't really create that much at Florida State. He had 2 dribble jumpers as a freshman, increased that to 37 as a sophomore. It's not like that's a prolific number. That's basically 1 per game. And this season in San Antonio, he's self-created nearly 62% of his offense, which that's a huge jump. I mean, even a year ago, he only self-created 24% of his offense with San Antonio. That's a huge jump. And to see he's become more efficient, that's pretty astounding. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar level player or perennial all-star, but that kind of self-creation jump where you're able to manufacture shots off the dribble, get to your spots, that's pretty impressive. So I've been really happy with him in that aspect, and he's never been better at it in his career than this year.
So it seems like, is there still star potential? Is he a future all-star to you? Is his ceiling higher than Keldon Johnson at this point?
I think so. He's able to get to his spots better. He's smoother off the dribble. He's able to elevate better on his jumper. He's got a longer wingspan. He's got a higher release point. I think the last piece of the puzzle for him is maybe if he's to enter that all-star territory, he's going to have to start knocking down threes off the dribble. It doesn't have to be, at a Dame or Steph or, Anthony Simons level or something like that, but just a couple a game, and also figure out how to get to the rim more often. Because right now, he finishes decently at the rim, but that's because he picks his spots. He only attempts about 2 shots at the rim per game. It's not particularly high. He's only getting to the free throw line a couple of times a game. That's also not particularly high. So if he can do those 2 things, and those are big ifs, he can become an all-star. But time's on his side, right? He's 21 years old. He's shown a lot of growth this season. Unfortunately, he's injured, and he won't be back until after the all-star break. So we'll see if he picks up where he left off. But I'm fairly optimistic for his outcome to be an all-star, fringe all-star level player.
Do you think Pop sticks around longer if they end up landing Victor?
Wow, yeah. I would say probably so, because that sort of expedites your rebuild. Even if they land Scoot Henderson, who's also a generational talent in his own respect, I could see Pop sticking around. But that being said, he probably might stick around either way. He's been kind of reinvigorated by being able to coach the young players. He's talked about it with the media where with Timmy and Tony and Manu and Bruce Bowen and all those veterans who were, either all-stars or all-NBA or all-defense caliber players, you don't have to do a lot of coaching up. You run sets, you ask them to do their job, they lead by example. But I think the thing that he has really mentioned, as he just has loved it this season, is being able to have these, as we mentioned, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds out there who need to be coached up, who are learning the X's and O's of the game, who are learning the ins and outs of the game, who need to be, kind of brought along slowly. And he enjoys that process of being able to coach them and coach them hard and teach them and hold them accountable. And he's just been a different guy where it seemed like in years past he was yelling at guys and he was yanking them off the court and he was frustrated after losses, to now he's kind of come to terms with the losses and he understands that this is a process and he's enjoying being around the younger players. So, either way, I kind of think he's going to be here for a couple more years at the very least.
Sounds kind of like Belichick, where Belichick post Brady, people are wondering if he was going to move on. It's like, I don't know. I feel like some of those guys, the way they're wired, like Nick Saban, people are like, oh, it's like, this is what they do. Like, this is what this guy does. He's always done. And it's like, I don't think they're looking forward to retirement. I don't think Pop strikes me as someone who's just looking forward to life without basketball. It gives them something to do. It gives some of these guys something to do every day.
Exactly. And, I don't like diving too much into, people's personal lives and speculating, but, his wife, Erin, passed away a couple of years ago. His kids are grown up. They have families of their own. If he's done with basketball, if I'm him, what do you do, right? Like, what are you doing if basketball's been your whole life and your kids are adults and your wife has passed away? Like, this is a staple of your life now. It always has been, but now more so than ever. So I could see him sticking around. And on top of that, even if he doesn't want to coach, like say he becomes like Phil Jackson where he's just not able to travel anymore, I still see him being heavily involved in the front office.
Yeah, he's 74 now, so we'll see. I'm trying to think who would be the
oldest coach in NBA. He is. He became the oldest coach in NBA history 3 years ago, and he's just added upon that record year after year after year for the last 3 years. So I thought he might be done a few years ago because he made a promise to DeMar and LaMarcus that, I'll stick around as long as you are here, and then they were gone. And he still stuck around. So it just doesn't feel like he's leaving anytime soon, which, of course, I'm fine with, and I'm sure Spurs fans are fine with as well.
If you had to guess who his successor is at this point, who would you guess?
I try to be as unbiased as possible and remove myself from like any fan biases, but the Spurs fan in me, having grown up in the city and been following the team since I was a child, wants to say Becky Hammon. Her contract will eventually run out with the Las Vegas Aces, but right now I think the most realistic person is probably Brett Brown. He's been Pop's buddy. He was a former assistant with him back in the day. He's been a head coach. He's led a rebuilding process in Philadelphia that's, not led to titles, but it definitely led to playoff appearances and deep runs in the playoffs. And, the players really respect him, and he's been a big part of the developmental process for these young guys. He's come in early with them, and he's worked with individual players. So I could see him taking over because it's just really tough to see, is it going to be Darius Songaila? Is it going to be Mitch Johnson? Is it going to be
Bill Self was the rumor forever,
on, right?
And then it's like his son's now. Isn't his son the G League coach?
No, they moved on.
Oh, okay. So he's not the G League coach anymore. So, okay, so he's definitely out. Bill Self is definitely not going to be that.
And he has a lifetime contract with Kansas, right? Obviously that ends when he wants it to end.
Right.
But if you're Bill Self, you got a fantastic program at Kansas. I would milk that as long as I could because that's a great gig.
Becky Hammon would be the best story, though. I think Becky Hammon.
I think she would.
And I wonder, too. I guess we'll see what happens with Ime. Like, because Pop talked about him and being close with him. I wonder if he's brought back to the staff next year if he doesn't get a head coaching job.
That's a really great point, too, because I know they had just asked Coach Pop, some of the Boston media and San Antonio media when they played the Celtics about, what are your thoughts on Ime? And he was like, I'm not going to go into personal life, but I will tell you I respect him. He's still a friend. We talk regularly. I know he's a great basketball mind. So I could see that. Even Will Hardy, if maybe things don't work out in Utah. But I think the Jazz have a good thing going there, even though they're not a great team. But he's really helped them, I think, exceed all expectations. And he's done a really good job in year one.
They're in a rebuild. They're starting this. I don't think the timelines match. Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know. Becky Hammon would be a great one. Brett Brown's, he's just sneaky old. That put him at like 64, 65 when he took over. If Pop does it a couple more years, then you're like, well, that won't last. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, you're immediately looking for a successor or like on the hunt. So I get what you're saying, but right now I would say maybe there's not an apparent, like an heir apparent that's super obvious. But
which is kind of wild. You would have assumed because he's been there for so long, they would have had a parent. But it's just they've been rated for so many years now that a lot of the heir apparents are just gone. They were there at one point, and then they're just gone because he's been there for so long.
Exactly. Like Sean Marks is gone. Monty Williams is gone. Mike Budenholzer is gone. Even, gosh, the head coach for the Grizzlies, who I'm blanking on right now.
Taylor Jenkins, yeah.
I mean, you could even throw Quinn Snyder into the ring.
I was going to say Quinn Snyder might be a sneaky,
Snyder,
interesting option. He's just sitting out there.
You never know. I mean, there's just so many options because that coaching tree is so extensive. I think it's going to be one of those things that we'll probably be surprised when it happens.
Yeah. Well, what can we look out from you, Noah, the rest of the week here on the Air Alamo front, the podcast front, the YouTube front? What do you want to plug as we wrap up here tonight?
Yeah, well, first off, I really appreciate you bringing me on. As far as plugging stuff, I just became the editor-in-chief over at Air Alamo, so I'm still getting acclimated over there. We've got a bunch of Spurs coverage, from game day coverage to pregame coverage to analysis to trade rumors and all sorts of hypotheticals over there. So check us out there. But as far as the podcast, that is on hold until we kind of finalize things. But Alamo City Limits, that will be the podcast. We're moving from SB Nation over to Fansided. And you can check out my YouTube channel. It's just my name, No Magaro-George. We're doing some film study stuff over there. So really enjoy doing that. Hope to get to that soon as I really get settled in with Air Alamo. But again, thank you so much for bringing me on. I had a blast talking Spurs basketball, and I hope you enjoyed it too.
Absolutely. Well, good luck with the merger and all that good stuff, and I'll have you back on soon.